Alright, we got 2 Empire movies coming out 2 weeks in a row. Let's do this. Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. So Frozen Empire is, I'll call it the 4th canon Ghostbusters movie. Really, it's the follow-up to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which came out back in 2021. After the events of that movie, the new Ghostbusters have relocated back to New York, and you guessed it, there's a new evil entity out there that gets unveiled, and it wants to bring about an ice-cold apocalypse. So our ghost-busting misfits have to save the day. Now, this is gonna be one of those times where I'm gonna go against the grain, because I know this movie's been getting mostly bad reviews, but I just gotta be honest here, I liked it. I enjoyed myself. The movie's not perfect, just like the last one. There are definitely some things that did not land with me. But overall, if I am asked if I had fun with this movie, I will say yes, I did. Because I thought this was a pretty fun movie. Alright, McKenna Grace returning as Phoebe Spengler, who is now 15. She pretty much carries these movies, let's be honest. I mean, she is the main character after all, so it makes sense. But I think she does a really good job because she's relatable. I like her story arcs and her emotional arcs in these movies. In fact, there's one she has in here. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's an arc that she shares with another character that I really liked. It was predictable, oh yeah, for sure. But what can I say? It was executed really well. And yeah, I say that McKenna Grace carries these movies. You would think Paul Rudd would be the one who does, because he is the biggest name in these movies. But Paul Rudd plays Paul Rudd in this movie. Like, his character, Gary Gruberson, is indistinguishable personality-wise from Scott Lang, Ant-Man, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They are the exact same character, no difference at all. I just fear for Paul Rudd. I don't want him to get typecast like this all the time. Because he's a super likable guy, and he's fun to watch on screen, but just nothing about his performance surprised me at all. That's kind of a bummer. I will say, of the veterans coming back from the original Ghostbusters films, Dan Aykroyd is the one who's most prominent. I actually liked him too. He has his own emotional arc that he goes through. Sometimes his acting got a little hammy. I mean, dare I say that about the great Dan Aykroyd? Don't get me wrong, I love the guy. There are just a couple of times where his delivery, I was like, is that the best you got there? I've seen better acting out of you, Elwood Blues, and if you understood that reference, that is a win. All I'm saying is that he definitely had more screen time than Ernie Hudson and Bill Murray and Annie Potts. Also, Kumail Nanjiani's in this movie. His character is actually more important than you might think, and I thought he was fine. His character bordered on annoying a few times, at least to me, kind of like Podcast did in the last movie. Yeah, I was like, alright, this is the new awkward guy. I mean, there are like 5 awkward characters in this movie though. To its detriment, I will say. But really, let me just break down this movie for you right here. When coming up with the story for this movie, the filmmakers said, and I quote, they wanted to make a long episode of the animated series. Credit where it's due, that's exactly what this movie feels like. Granted, I've never seen a single episode of the real Ghostbusters, but I imagine, it was what it looks like. Just the Ghostbusters going on their ghostly busting adventures in a 20-minute Saturday morning cartoon. That is what this movie is, just stretched out into 2 hours. What adventure are the Ghostbusters going on today? Oh, well, we gotta stop New York from freezing over during the summer, only for it to just freeze over naturally a few months later, cause who are we kidding, that's what happens there. But seriously, just in that, I could just sit back and relax and have fun with this movie. It's not that serious. Now, one thing that did actually kind of frighten me from that last trailer, the second one, is the fact that it just had so much nostalgia bait. I mean, come on, you got Paul Rudd quoting the song.
Buster makes me feel good. Makes me feel good.
I was like, come on, really? But maybe it is the fact that I'm still just not nostalgically tied to the original films. I'm not. I didn't grow up with them or anything. I've still only seen the first one like once, and I've still never seen the second one at all. So most likely for that reason, I didn't notice a whole lot of member berries in this movie. It didn't have nearly as much nostalgia bait as that second trailer made it look like it was gonna have. I mean, even the bit in that second trailer where we have Annie Potts on the phone going, Ghostbusters, what do you want? Like she did in the first one. That's not even in this movie at all. They cut that out, and I'm glad they did. Now granted, there might be some things in this movie that are nostalgia bait that just went over my head because I didn't remember it. But if I didn't remember it and I didn't notice it, well, that's my experience watching it, so it's fine with me. A big part of this movie, as should be a big part of most any Ghostbusters movie, is the comedy. Is this movie funny? Not really. Doing the math in my head, I laughed out loud at like 25% of the jokes in this movie. Which actually, credit where it's due, that's more than I usually laugh in most comedies these days. There were a few funny lines sprinkled throughout this movie where I was like, meh, that's good. And the audience around me too. For the most part, the audience seemed to really enjoy this one. I mean, of course, that being said, there were a lot more jokes where I wasn't laughing at all. A few jokes where the audience around me was laughing, but I wasn't. And a few jokes where I was laughing, but the audience around me was not. A mixed experience, that's what it was. The movie is a bit predictable too, but then again, so is every Ghostbusters movie. But not just in the obvious plot, but actually some of the more subtle emotional arcs. Again, going back to Phoebe's one that I was talking about earlier, with the other character. Like I said, it was predictable. There were some lines where I knew what they were going to say before before they said it. It was that predictable. Again, I still enjoyed watching it, sure. After all, unpredictability is a hard thing to come by these days in movies, so I don't sweat it that much. Really, what brought this movie home for me was those emotional arcs with the characters. I mean, come on, this movie's got some good messages and some good underlying themes in there, woven into the narrative. They're in there. I picked up on them because they're relatable. I want to commend that. As for the musical score, Dario Marianelli composed this time around. I'm usually pretty fond of his work, and he did a good job here. It uses more of that theremin from the last movie, although I think I still prefer Afterlife's score over this one, but this is some pretty good stuff. Dario Marianelli never does wrong. Props to him. In the end, you can shit on me all you want for having the weird opinion, but I had fun with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I do think Afterlife is better than this one, but if they want to make another one after this, we can have like a new Ghostbusters sequel-ish trilogy. I'd totally be down for that. I still like the characters for the most part, the emotional arcs and the fun action scenes. Like I said, this is an episode of the animated Ghostbusters TV show, the real Ghostbusters, if you will. If you just know that going in, you can kick your feet up and have fun with this one. Just like the last movie, just saying. For Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I will say, go see this movie while it's in theaters. So, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, have you seen it yet? What are your thoughts on it? And which one do you like more, Afterlife or Frozen Empire? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's showtime. That Beetlejuice teaser trailer is finally out. I have got to talk about that. That is definitely going to be my next video, so be on the lookout for that. Peace!